of my very favorite authors. Alexa Aston is here to talk to us, and Mary Lancaster, Sophia Nye, and Sandra Sookoo. Ladies, so thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks for having us.
Sure.
Yep. Be here.
Right, so we're going to start out this week with Tuesday's release, which is a brand new series from Sandra Sookoo, and it's The Devil's Game, and it's book 1 in the Hastings Sisters, and I'm really excited about this series. Sandra, can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I'm excited too. It seems I've been waiting forever for this series to come out. I'm writing book number 3 right now, but it's about a group of sisters. There's 6 sisters in all, and Dad's having some financial problems. You know, they're getting ready to lose the house for taxes and stuff like that. So they all decide, okay, we're all going to go be companions. We're going to help Dad out with the funds and stuff like that. And of course, it doesn't go according to plan. In this one, first of all, let me just show you this cover. I mean, does this woman look not fierce?
She does.
Look at that.
Yeah, she does look fierce.
So since I had these covers like eons ahead of when I had to write these books, I took inspiration from all of these covers. So in the first book, The Devil's Game, that releases tomorrow, she's companion to a nouveau riche gal that's trying. Her dad wants her to get into the English, aristocracy and things like that. So she's companion to this girl, and this girl doesn't want to play by any of the rules. She's, very willful, very secretive, very troublesome. And the thing about it is she's got a really high dowry on her head. So that makes her an easy mark for fortune hunters, for, let's just say, guys that probably don't have her best interests at heart. And that's when they all meet the Viscount. And he's almost got his pockets to let. He really needs a fortune. Things aren't going his way. So he really wants to marry this girl and just ship her off to the country and continue doing his devilish lifestyle. And all that goes wrong because he's fascinated with the companion. So, the bulk of the book is her trying to keep him away from the girl, not realizing that he's kind of after her too. So, sparks fly. It's a really sexy book. This series went hard sexy. I didn't plan it that way. It just happened that way, and that's what we're doing now.
There you go. I love a good hard sexy book. So
they took this story and they ran with it, and I'm like, wait. I'm just rushing after I'm trying to write.
I know you're such a plotter too, so that has to be like to have your characters go off on their own. So
yeah, so I really hope you guys pick up the book. Oh my gosh, I'm having so much trouble. Pick up the book. Please read these characters since I'm having so much trouble filming about them. We
get all 6 sisters.
I'm doing the 3rd sister right now. One of the sisters I'm going to do in an anthology. And then I hope that Dragonblade will contract the other 2 sisters so I can do books on them.
Oh, cool.
So when I turn in this book next month to my editor, I'll talk to them about that. So, and then, if you guys really love this book, please go leave a good review.
Yes. Reviews are great. Reviews are much loved by everybody. Awesome. Well, I'm really excited about the new series. I've been
Me
watching
too.
the cover, and you're right, she does look fierce. It's like. So the next book that releases this week is Alexa Aston's book, and it's The Perks of Loving a Viscount, and it's book 2 in the Strongs of Shadowcrest. The cover for this one, my goodness, it's beautiful. It's just like the series gets a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. It's just
every single time. I know. This is going to be the start of all of the sisters that we met in the first book. If you have read it or you haven't, James comes back from sea and he marries Sophie, and she's pretty fierce herself, and they have a little fun behind closed doors too. But he has these 4 half sisters, which he's like, he's a nice guy. Get rid of the half thing. You are my sisters. You are my blood. So he and his wife Sophie are going to take care of these 4 girls, and the first 2 are twins. They're the older ones, and they're supposed to make their come out this season. Well, Pippa is a tomboy. Pippa is not interested in the pretty gowns and all of the social affairs and the niceties. And she's a cute girl, but her twin Georgina is gorgeous. And she and Georgie are the closest, of anyone in the family. And she doesn't want to be jealous of her sister, but she knows she's just not going to stack up against Georgie when they hit the marriage mart. So she's very ambivalent about that, and happens to make friends with the new Viscount that property is adjacent to theirs. She was friends with the original Viscount. He's passed away, and it was kind of an odd relationship because he was decades older than her, but he taught her how to fish and that kind of thing. And so when the new Viscount, Seth, comes along, he gifts her with a fishing pole, which was left to her in the will by the previous Viscount. And of course, Seth is like, what is my uncle doing? And why is he giving this chick a fishing pole? And he also is kind of a fish out of water. When she is the tomboy and doesn't fit into the girly stuff, he's been at sea his entire life. His uncle paid for him to go. He started as a cabin boy, and he's worked his way all the way up to captain of a sea vessel.
Oh, wow.
And then his uncle did not have any children, and the uncle dies. His father has passed. And so all of a sudden he is this newly minted Viscount, and he's a little resentful. He's lived his entire life at sea. He wants to stay at sea. He does not want to be a part of polite society. But this cute little tomboy with a fishing pole kind of steals his heart. So it's a little, story, maybe a little fish out of water for both of them, but they're going to actually have a very sweet romance. There's not a lot of angst in this book. It's just,
nice.
just a lot of sweetness and a lot of connection and everything. And then Pippa winds up not having to go do her come out. She can go to the season now with his hunky husband and relax.
Oh, there's lots to love about those kind of stories where you just get to watch people fall in love, where there isn't a lot of angst and there isn't a lot of outside intrigue, and it's just
it's fun the way it unfolds. And once again, they don't have all the parameters on them because they're in the country, and the rules are a little loosier-goosier there and everything. And once again, she finds her soulmate, and of course now she's eager for Georgie, who will be the third book in the Strongs of Shadowcrest, and Georgie will actually go to the season.
Oh, fun. So we get the best of both worlds then.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, the next book that comes out this week is Mary Lancaster's books, and it's the Soldier's Impossible Love, and it's book 3 in the One Night in Blackhaven series, because we get to go to Blackhaven.
Yes. Yeah, this one is all about Roderick, who's the second oldest in the family, and he's been in the army all his life. Unfortunately, Waterloo was just a step too far for him, and he's now got what we would call PTSD. So he suffers horrible nightmares and flashbacks and uncertain tempers and all the rest of it. And he got sent home from the army on enforced leave of absence because he attacked some of his fellow officers while out of control. So he's been sent home, and he's ended up in the house in Blackhaven with all his siblings, and he is gradually getting, because of the peace up there, he's getting much more relaxed and more like himself, and gradually he seems to be improving. And then he goes to the ball with all his siblings, the same one where the last 2 books met their matches. So he turns up, and then he sees this woman, he thinks, over a crowded room, and their eyes meet, and he thinks, I want her, she's for me. And then he gets closer to her and realizes she's not for him. She's about even 18 years old. She's sort of young and innocent looking, and she also turns out to be the youngest sister of the Earl of Braithwaite, who readers will probably remember from the first Blackhaven series. So she's now grown up, and she's an artist. She paints, but of course her family won't let her paint or show professionally. She always, she's just a little amateur. She's doing her little watercolor dabbings to show off her accomplishments to a future husband. That's all they think of her talent. But apart from her brother-in-law, who knows that she's got a lot more, and she has this ambition. She and her sister want to go off around Europe doing arty things and musicy things, but there's always been a war on, so they can't go. But now the war's finished and they're beginning to think about it more seriously. But then she meets Roderick, and she wants to stay with him, but he won't think of her that way because she thinks she's too young. But she's actually got a wise head on young shoulders, and she's not really that young at all. He learns, but getting there is a bit more problematic because obviously they have to have lots of adventures and bad guys because it's Blackhaven and these things just happen there. Yeah, but they will find a happy ending eventually.
So fun. And I always forget until we start talking about the One Night in Blackhaven isn't just the series title. It's actually the setup of the story. It actually takes place over different stories over one night. Is that right?
Yeah, they all start on the same night when they meet the love of their life, but obviously it moves on from there. Some of the stories finish earlier and some later because it gets a bit complicated. You would have to give away the endings for other people. So as long as you read them in order, you're fine. There's no spoilers.
But even keeping track of just the start of their romance over one night is an interesting challenge to take on because you have to track where everybody is. It's like,
I've got all these notes and things, and every so often I go back to one. I think, yikes! I forgot that. There's a masquerade ball later on that they all go to, and I'd forgotten that one of the characters was dressed up in a particular way, and I'd already handed the book in with them not dressed up. Damn! I'll have to change that during edits.
Oh my. Well,
I made a rod from my own back there.
I'm sorry?
I made a rod from my own back there. I made it a bit too complicated.
Well, there's lots to love about Blackhaven and lots to love about what's still to come. So I'm excited about the rest of the series. And then the last book that released this week is Sophia Nye's book, and it's The Warriors of Fianna's series, and it's Prince of Fire, which is book 2 in the series. Can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, sure. So book 1 was a brother's best friend romance, the heroine's brother. And so he's the hero of book 2. So we get to follow him through his story.
So fun.
Yeah, and it's a second chance romance. And I always enjoy reading those, but I'd never tried writing one. So I specifically picked that as a trope to kind of play with in this. And Dallin and Nia fell in love like when they met as teenagers. You know how it is, right? Like you're in high school, you see that's about the age they were young, and they hit it off right away. And they dated for about a year before Nia left him, and she didn't tell him why. She just absolutely broke his heart because he thought they were going to get married. And yeah, it's like the first 2 chapters of the book are the flashback of them falling in love. So you get sort of the basis of the relationship, and it is heart-wrenching to read. She just totally leaves him in the dust, does not explain. But so the reason, what you find out pretty early on is the reason she doesn't explain it is because she knows he's such a nice guy that he would try to make it work, and she doesn't see a way that it could work. So he's a prince, which means he needs heirs. And she realizes that she's inherited her mother's condition of early menopause and she won't be able to have any kids. And so she breaks it off with him before he finds out so that he can go on and have heirs, and she's not holding back his line because she's afraid that, if he finds out later on, he'll say it's going to be okay, but when push comes to shove and he realizes she's serious, that it's going to be a real problem down the road. Because in medieval Ireland, you could have multiple wives, because basically all the laws were like, we need children any way we can get them, right? So they're very generous toward illegitimate children. It's very easy to adopt them in. They're taken care of by the whole family. but also you can have multiple partners so that you have children. And a lot of people didn't do that, but the nobles in particular had a vested interest in having more kids. So that's kind of the setup. And then he, like years later, I think it's like 6 years later, he runs into her while he's on one of his Fianna missions, and it like stops him dead in his tracks, right? Because he did not ever expect to see her again. And then she's become a healer because she can't heal herself, so she tries to help other people. And she ends up having to help him heal, and they're forced to spend time together, even though they don't want to see each other at all. And it's a really sweet, kind of heartfelt, sort of slow rekindling of their initial spark.
Oh, I love lots of parts about that. I don't love that he got his heart broken, but I kind of love that he's the one that, like he's the one that got left, and and her reasons for doing it are just just to save him. So, yeah. And I love a good second romance too, because I think that idea of already having that history together lets the second romance go even deeper than it would have been able to go before, because you don't have to do all of that building.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I really wanted to have the chapters at the beginning, because I didn't want to be constantly talking about something that had happened that the readers didn't get to see. Yeah. So I thought we'll start it out so they can actually see this relationship they had,
Yeah. So then we're going into it with the heartbreak fresh on,
Yes. And that way, when Dallin is very grumpy, you know why.
Tug away. We're right here, just cold, tug the heartstrings away. Awesome. Well, there's just so many good books to look forward to this week. I'm excited for all of them, and I love the range of series and also the range of heat and the different tropes and everything. So there's so much to look forward to this week. I thought, since Sandra started a new series this week, we did an interview with her on the Dragonblade website, and when I was reading through the answers to her questions, one of the things that we give as a list of questions that you can answer is there something what do you read? And she mentioned reading the Anna Green Gables series, which got me thinking about all the books and series that you love as a kid, and the way you first fall in love with reading. And I think for authors, that's the inroads. You fall in love with reading, and you fall in love with the idea of being able to tell your own stories, and then it's game on. So I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about the kind of books that were important to you when you were growing up, either the ones that you read yourself or books that you may have fallen in love with again, that you may have read to children or something later on. So I was kind of hoping we could take a few minutes and do that if you ladies are game.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Well, Alexa, do you want to go first?
Okay. I was a big animal lover, and I think I read every horse and dog book that was out there. Big Red, King of the Wind, all those Marguerite Henrys. But Black Beauty is something that really touched me. The fact that this horse went through so many different lives, and we don't think about that, especially nowadays, pets are common to a lot of us. And so they only live that one life, within our home and the neighborhood. But Black Beauty went through so many different reinventions, from, a beloved pet to, being the horse that carries the cart and, whatnot and everything. And I just loved seeing all those different layers of that story and getting the insight of what it was like being the horse. Yes, a main character. Mm-hmm. And so that always intrigued me. And I really thought, if I write one day, which I always thought I would, I really want, of course, a plot is important, but I think I want a lot of my stories to be character driven. Mm-hmm. So that kind of has reflected, in what I do. Another book that I really enjoyed was From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Weiler.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Oh, really?
Story. It won a Newbery Award, and it was two kids, and Claudia, she was a smart girl. And a lot of my heroines, they're smart and fierce like Claudia. I think I have to kind of trace some of that back to her. But she and her brother kind of run away from home and live in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And it's
Yep.
this whole thing about, how they stash clothes in the empty, violin case, and how they work getting around the guards and everything. And it was fun. It was clever. There was adventure to it. There was mystery. And then they finally find out who this Mrs. Basil Frankweiler is. They leave the museum and track her down. And so I thought that was just a really fun element. I had never read a book like that. And once again, I try to put things in my books that are those twists and turns that readers aren't expecting, and yet have them end in a heartwarming way. And I know, of course, we're all writing romance, and of course, we want to have that happily ever after tied in the bow, but it's not always the relationship sometimes in our plot. Sometimes it's the other people that interact with our characters, and you want those stories tied up as well. So those are two of my favorites from my childhood.
Oh, wow. Oh, well, I wrote down the second one so I can go look for it. Because I hadn't heard about it
It's
before.
Elaine Konigsberg is her name.
Living in an art museum would be about the greatest thing in the whole entire world. When Night at the Museum came out, it's like I watched it, and I was like, wow,
No line. You can just walk straight up to the painting.
Do that. Oh, awesome. Mary, what about you?
First ones I remember getting really into when I really wanted to read was adventure stories by Enid Blyton. I don't know if you read Enid Blyton in America, did you? Very English writer, very middle class English kind of things, all about like friends who go off and solve mysteries or have great adventures, and they're all sort of camping out on their own, and they're only about 10 years old, like that's ever going to happen. But I loved all that, and it was just like, oh, adventurous life, that would be great. I didn't run a mile, I'm sure. Yikes, it's a beastie, and run for it. But I loved those, and then I really got into Little Women.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole series, and I loved those, and I was so into the characters. I used to make my friends at school play the games with me, and we all had to be different characters. I always wanted to be Beth because she was a good guy until she died, of course. I sort of painted myself into a corner there.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun. I love, and I get what you say about 10-year-olds camping on their own, but I love one of the things when books make the adults kind of superfluous, like they're not neglectful, they're just busy, and so they have to solve their problems on their own. So awesome. Sophia, what about you?
So I think when I was really young, my favorite things to read were the Royal Diaries series, which it's like they follow different.
The Princess Mia books?
No, not the Princess Diaries. They're called the Royal Diaries.
Oh, okay.
But they follow different princesses in history. So like there was one about like Cleopatra, and they're written like a journal, right? So you follow like the formative years of her life in journal, like fictional journal format. And there was one like Keulani in Hawaii, and it was all of the like Nzinga in Africa. It was all over the world, and it was all these different historic princesses, and it was kind of their culture and their perspective and like how they grew into these like leaders that they became. And I ate those books up. There were like, I don't know, 15 or 20, and I would stay up under the covers reading them. I love those. And then when I got just a little older, my all-time favorite book is Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier. And it's a retelling of The Sons of Lear, which is an Irish fairy tale. And that is the book that got me started on Ireland. And so for me, and I ended up, going to graduate school and studying it. And it, I write set it in that setting now. But that was the story that kind of started everything. Like my love of romance, my love of historical fiction, my love of Ireland, my love of gardening. She's like a huge gardener and like literally everything I do started in that book. So, and it's still one of my favorites to read.
Oh, wow. Do you reread? Do you reread it often?
I used to, like up until I started reading it maybe in junior high, and I read it almost every year through college, maybe. But I actually never reread books, so that was a big exception. Because I'll start it again, and I'll be like, "Oh, I know what happens. I don't remember." But I loved that. I love rereading that one still. It's comforting,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is something really nice about that, like knowing where you're going to end up, and
Yeah.
and like I've walked down this path before, so I can walk it again, and it's not going to be surprising. So
Yeah.
fun. What about you, Sandra?
Well, in addition to the Anne of Green Gables,
Awesome.
I think my whole life started when I was 10 because my parents got divorced. So I'm a Generation Xer, so nobody gave a crap about us, So I would always ride my bike across town to go to the library. That's where I hung out. And so I was kind of reading beyond my age level, So Anne of Green Gables, in fact, all of Lucy Maud Montgomery's battery of work, I read and reread and kept reading, And then her Emily and New Moon series is about a girl that wants to be an author. So that's kind of where that part of me came from. So then I had this best friend that, she was like really into the Babysitter Club books. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to turn down a book. So I started reading them, and they're really boring to me because I don't really care about any of that stuff. I mean, I was a babysitter for many, many years of my life. I just didn't like contemporary fiction, I think. So then I started reading like all the Nancy Drew books, and then like Encyclopedia Brown books. And back then there was like gender specific books, but I didn't really care about that, So then I think I was like 12, and I got started on do you guys remember the Regency romances that Zebra put out or Signet put out? They were like what you read after Barbara Cartland. And you graduated from Barbara Cartland, and you read these Regencies that, they didn't have any sex in them. That the only thing they did was like kiss at the end, that thing. And the great thing about this was not only were they at the library, but you could get them at the grocery store for like $3, and there was like hundreds of them. So that's what I was spending my allowance on after a while, I was getting at the library, trading in all my books so I could get all these books, and that's where I became a historical romance writer.
I remember,
of course, after that, and I started reading things like Jude Devereaux and stuff like that, at the age of 12, probably wasn't the best idea, but like I said, there were no parents around, so I don't know.
I've had a hard time. I sometimes think it wasn't the best of ideas, but I don't think it was the historicals that were not the best of ideas. I think maybe V.C. Andrews was
V.C. Andrews and like Goosebumps, the Goosebumps series and all of that. And then I graduated to like reading the Jurassic Park books and everything by Michael Crichton. And I scared myself silly all the time, so I couldn't even sleep at night, because his books are much different than the movies that they created from the books. They're very real, and they're very terrifying because you're like right there. Of course, then I graduated to Robin Cook's medical thrillers, and all that stuff. So yeah, reading is a lifelong hobby, and I think that writing is also. I think when you were a really intense reader, I think it's only natural that you become a writer, because then you want to start telling your own stories, and you want to start telling other people's stories that might not, have a voice to tell their stories. Or, when you read stuff and you're like, oh yeah, that's really cool, but I think I can make that better, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean, books and reading and writing go hand in hand, I think.
It always makes me a little nervous when authors talk about not reading anymore.
Right?
Because it feels like is so integral to being a writer, that being a reader,
Now I do reread my favorite books. I mean, because there's just something that's like, it's like having a bowl of chicken noodle soup sometimes. You're like, yeah, I know what happens. I know I could quote you Anne of Green Gables stuff inside and outside. I've even got a lampshade with the proposal scene that's, makes up the shades of the lamp, because, one of my favorite things in all the world, And it's just, you just feel good after you reread these books. They don't even have to be children's stories. There are some romances from some of my favorite authors that I do reread. Like, for instance, Elizabeth Peters. She wrote she wrote all kinds of stuff under different names and stuff, and like I have her whole battery of work in both digital and paperback. But some of her books, they just resonate with you, you know, like either the plot line or a character or something that someone said to somebody else in the book or whatever, you know, it just makes you feel good. And that's why I like to reread sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. That makes perfect sense. And when you were talking about Anne of Green Gables, it's one of those things where you just know you're gonna feel good. It's just, you know, it's a good warm feeling without a lot of extra angst.
Well, I think that, yeah, in today's society, in today's age, when everything is uncertain all the time, and all you see is like blah, 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 negative all the time, you know, when you rewatch a favorite series or you reread a favorite book, you already know up front that everything's going to be okay, everybody's going to be happy at the end, it's going to be okay, you know?
Yeah, and that's one of the promises that romance makes, is that
Yeah.
if you hang with us, when you get to the end, it's going to be like, it's going
And
to be good.
I find myself telling my characters this all the time. I'm like, yeah, it might seem like a really bad thing, but there's going to be some other bad things, worse things coming for you. But you just got to stay with me. I promise you're going to be happy at the end. And my husband will be like, who are you talking to? And I'm like, oh, I'm talking to my hero in my current book. Why? He's like, because you sound weird. Because his office is my office is downstairs in our house and his office is upstairs. So, you know, sometimes when he works from home, he'll, you know, hear me. And I forget that I'm not at home alone, you know.
You're allowed to do, the authors are allowed to talk to themselves. It's not even crazy. Like, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us this week. We could keep going and going and going. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I'm going to reiterate what Sandra said in the beginning, which is leave reviews. Like, I haven't mentioned that before, but that is always appreciated. Writing is a pretty solitary endeavor, and reviews from readers mean the world. And also, when you leave reviews, if you can do it in a way that gives people the flavor of the book without necessarily giving the details of the book, but when you're enthusiastic about it, it makes it easier for us as readers to find books that we want to read too.
Or just to add this, because this is becoming an issue, if you really love the book and you say, I love this book in the review, please mark it higher than a 3-star, because that just brings the whole book's rating down, and it looks like you didn't.
We're not going to tell people what stars to rate. We're just going to ask.
I know, but it just brings the book's rating down.
And thank everybody for taking the time to review, because we really do appreciate it. And I'm going to also say the one thing that I say all the time, which is that Dragonblade books are the best deal on pre-order and release. So you got to make sure when you grab them fast. And if you don't grab them fast, you can always read in Kindle Unlimited. Ladies, thanks again for taking the time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.